The US government just spent 3 weeks banning its own most powerful AI models for national security. But American businesses are quietly routing 46% of their AI workloads directly to China. Why? Because Chinese models like DeepSeek cost 5 times less than American equivalents. Another Chinese model, GLM 5.2, just saw unprecedented 80x customer growth in 1 week. It's a massive paradox. The US restricts domestic frontier models to lock down security, but leaves the backdoor wide open for companies to import Chinese-trained alternatives. Take America's Fable 5 model. The government forced it offline for 18 days, and now that it's back, a single heavy coding session costs $100. For profit-driven businesses, defaulting to the 44-cent Chinese alternative is just economically rational. Compare that to South Korea, who just committed $880 billion to build their own AI sovereignty. The massive gap between what the government says about AI safety and what businesses actually do is widening every single week. So you need to check today. Is your company's own infrastructure secretly running on Chinese models without you even knowing it?
So imagine this. While the US government has spent the last few weeks aggressively banning its own most powerful AI models, citing, really serious national security concerns, American businesses, well, they've been doing something entirely different. Up to 46% of US enterprise AI workloads are currently, and very quietly, being routed straight to Chinese models.
Welcome to this explainer on what we're calling the Great AI Inversion. I am so pumped to dive into this with you today, because we're looking at a massive, largely hidden financial shift happening right under our noses. It's basically a story about this huge widening gap between what national policy dictates and what corporate reality actually looks like. And we are going to unpack exactly how and why this is all going down.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The investigation into the hard numbers. 2. The paradox of US policy. 3. A real-world scenario we're calling the $100 session. And 4. What you actually need to do today in your own workplace.
Okay, moving right into Section 1, the investigation.
This entire shift was brought to light by a really explosive CNBC investigation from July 7th. And honestly, the numbers on the ground are staggering. Between 30 and 46% of mainstream enterprise AI token usage at American companies is currently flowing directly to Chinese models. And to be clear, this isn't some fringe experimental hacker trend. No, these are standard, mainstream American businesses making a deliberate choice, and as you'll see, they aren't doing it for ideological reasons at all. They are doing it because the cost pressures are just absolutely overwhelming.
There are 2 specific models capturing the lion's share of this US enterprise traffic. First up is DeepSeek V4 Pro, which has been making massive waves strictly because of its unbelievable price point. And the second is GLM 5.2, which is built by ZAI. But here's the thing about GLM 5.2, it isn't just cheap, it's actually incredibly capable. It scored a 62.1% on the really rigorous SW Bench Pro evaluation. That makes it highly competitive with the absolute best Western frontier models. So businesses aren't just getting a bargain bin discount here, they're getting top-tier performance.
And the sheer momentum of that performance-to-price ratio, it's undeniable. In a single week in early July, GLM 5.2 experienced an absolutely unprecedented 80 times customer growth on Vercel. Now, Vercel is a massive developer deployment platform, and seeing that kind of explosive, overnight adoption in the enterprise space, it's almost unheard of. It just shows a market sprinting, literally sprinting, toward the path of least economic resistance.
Which brings us to Section 2, the paradox, because all this explosive growth of imported models is happening against a deeply contradictory backdrop.
The United States government is currently pulling in 2 completely opposite directions. On one hand, they've tightly restricted domestic frontier AI. For example, they restricted the GPT 5.6 Sol, Terra, and Luna models to just 20 companies total. They even banned Claude Fable 5 entirely for 18 days due to biological reasoning and cybersecurity concerns. But on the flip side, there are 0 restrictions on American companies importing and utilizing Chinese AI models for their daily workloads. It's like the government is aggressively bolting the front door locked while leaving the back door wide open.
The crucial point here, the real so what of it all, is found in the token economics. Let's talk about input costs. DeepSeek V4 Pro costs just 44 cents per million input tokens. Compare that to GPT 5.5, which is sitting way up at $2.50 per million. That means DeepSeek is an incredible 5.7 times cheaper. Even GLM 5.2 at $1.40 is significantly undercutting Claude Sonnet 5 at $2. When you're an enterprise running millions or honestly billions of tokens every single month, a 5.7 times cost difference isn't just a nice little discount. That is the literal margin between turning a profit and taking a loss.
And to add to the sheer complexity of this paradox, the Trump administration actually canceled an AI executive order signing ceremony today, July 8th, and they did it without offering any public explanation. No details have been confirmed on what the order even contained or why it got pulled, but it really highlights that right now there is simply no coherent government response to the reality of how American businesses are actually consuming AI.
This creates a really stark global contrast. While the U.S. enterprise market basically defaults to cheap Chinese imports, look over at South Korea. They just announced this massive 10-year, $880 billion domestic investment plan for AI sovereignty. And that includes a staggering $518 billion from Samsung and SK Hynix alone, just for new chip fabrication. That is what a country looks like when it chooses to actively build and compete with Chinese AI through sheer domestic infrastructure rather than just importing the cheaper alternative.
All right, Section 3, the $100 session. Let's talk about prohibitive pricing.
I want to connect those high-level government restrictions directly to the soaring costs that individual developers and businesses are feeling today. Because today, that compensatory 50% weekly usage window, the one Anthropic offered to make up for the 18-day Fable 5 export control suspension, well, it officially expired. That means every single Claude user who needs to access that powerful Fable 5 model is now back to paying full price in usage credits.
And let me tell you, the sticker shock is very real. Let's say you're running a single, heavy, autonomous, agentic coding session that processes about 2 million output tokens. Okay, so on Sonnet 5, which scores about 63.2% on SW Bench, that session costs $20. On Opus 4.8, it's $50. But on Fable 5, which, remember, you're reserving for the absolute hardest tasks because it scores above 80%, that single session now costs $100. The government made its best AI disappear for 18 days, and now that it's back, it costs $100 just to run one rigorous coding session. This is exactly the prohibitive pricing environment that is forcefully driving companies straight toward those 44-cent Chinese alternatives we talked about.
So let's pivot sharply. Section 4, what to do today.
We've looked at all the macroeconomics, but we need to talk about the micro-reality of your own workplace. And this is the high-stakes question you absolutely need to ask right now. Is your company's AI infrastructure running on Chinese models without you knowing it? Because, as we've seen, almost half the market already is.
If you're a business leader or a developer, here is your checklist for today. First, you must audit your token usage routing. Find out exactly which APIs your background tasks are calling. Second, you have to really weigh those massive cost savings against the potential data sovereignty risks of sending your corporate data overseas. And third, check your developer platforms, like Vercel for instance, to see if imported model usage has quietly just become the default for your engineering teams simply because it keeps their cloud bills down.
I really want to leave you with this thought. The gap between what the government says about AI safety and what businesses are actually doing is widening every week. If you want to continue seeing that gap clearly before it blindly impacts your own industry, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an explainer from us. We exist to break down these exact contradictions. So I'll turn it over to you to consider as we wrap up. Are the massive, undeniably huge cost savings of Chinese AI really worth the hidden risks to your data sovereignty? It's a question every single American business is answering right now, whether they realize it or not. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you in the next one.